Alright, hello economics students. It's been a while since I've recorded a new video, so I thought I'd do an answering AD and AS goal questions because I think with a few little tips and tricks we can make this process much easier. A lot of what you do is actually the same and you can apply the same structure to a lot of different questions. So let's get into it. We might get a question like this. We're going to do AD in this video. So explain how an insert AD factor, so any aggregate demand factor, would impact the achievement of any goal. So insert goal here. This could also be done with AS, and we're going to do that in the next video. But for now, so insert any of these AD factors: consumer confidence, exchange rates, disposable incomes, interest rates, rates of economic growth, and explain how a change in these factors, so an increase or decrease, appreciation, depreciation, would impact one of our goals. Okay, and we could do this fairly simply when we learn a few tricks. Now, I've drawn this the wrong way, I apologize, but always draw the aggregate demand, aggregate supply curve to help you, because on the y-axis, we see what happens to inflation. Here we're getting inflation, so that's pushing us further away from our goal, although we're not too close to capacity, so that's probably not a problem. We are seeing that we're going to create some stronger sustainable growth because there's real GDP. And because of real GDP, we're going to move closer to full employment because that leads to derived demand. Firms are producing, they need more labor. Okay, so y-axis, x-axis shows you everything you need to know for your three goals. So always draw it to help you. Now, the structure for answering a question like this is you need to start out with your factor. You need to demonstrate the understanding of the factor. So if it's consumer confidence, what does that mean? If it is an exchange rate, what does that mean? And how is it going to impact the spending or aggregate demand? The next thing you need to do is actually identify what type of spending changes. So whether it's exports and imports, government spending, investment spending, or consumption, and what happens to aggregate demand overall, and also which way the aggregate demand curve might shift. Then the third mark is really important, but a lot of students miss this, making a link between spending. So we've got an increase in spending in our economy, which leads to more production, more real GDP, or vice versa. If there's a decrease in spending, it might lead to a decrease in production. You've got to make that link there. It's really important. And finally, you want to be obviously demonstrating an understanding or showing an understanding of your goals and also what the impact is on that goal. So you might define it and then say it helps us achieve this goal or not. So let's look at an example of explain how an appreciation, so I've gone for a difficult one here, of the AUD would impact the achievement of full employment, but any goal could be there. So I've set out, we definitely want to show that what an exchange rate is and what an appreciation actually means. So an appreciation of the exchange rate, put in brackets so I don't disturb my flow, is the rate of the AUD, a rate at which the AUD is swapped with another currency. It will mean imports become cheaper and exports become more expensive. Remember, work out one and then the opposite happens. This will lead to a decrease in export spending. So I've set up my answer here by saying exports will become more expensive. So that's going to decrease spending on exports, or the X component, and vice versa. Import spending will increase, which leads to an overall decrease in aggregate demand. Sorry about that. You could add this extra bit here where the consumption spending might also decrease because we'll be substituting to cheaper imports. Then we've got a link to production. So as firms notice a decrease in sales and a decrease in spending, they decrease their production levels. Yeah, so because there's less spending on exports, some of these businesses like BHP and Rio Tinto, some of our big exporting businesses, they're going to slow down production and that will slow down GDP. Okay. Now here you can make the link, and you should make the link depending on what goal you use. So if the question's about full employment, you're going to say that will lead to a decrease in derived demand because that's what we're trying to get to. If it's low inflation, it will decrease inflationary pressures. That's what we're trying to get to. And same for stronger sustainable growth. You'll talk about real GDP growth. Then we bring it all together by saying this will push the Australian economy further away from its goal. And it will do this for all three goals. So it'll push us away from full employment. And I want to see the definitions here as well, or a demonstration. So, 4 to 4.5% is our full employment target. Low inflation is 2 to 3% on average, and stronger sustainable growth is 3 to 3.5%. So bringing all that together, we've looked at our factor, our aggregate demand component, and we've linked to production and kind of had a special link there depending on the goal back to the goal. Hope that